Rising prices, falling currencies. The effects of inflation are hitting hard. But in this age of globalization, what role is the Chinese regime playing in U.S. inflation? And how is the Middle East involved? In this special report, we look at how players in different countries move across the global chessboard and how actions thousands of miles away are felt here at home. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. With prices at a 40-year high and supply chains snarled, Americans are feeling the effects of inflation. Most eyes are pinned on the Fed, but there's a second area that's in play: China.
If we have supply chain disruption, this increases the price of goods. And of course, we import a tremendous number of our goods, or percentage of our goods, from China. So anything that's been disrupted, of course, the price is going to go up.
The world's second largest economy has a major impact on what people here in America can or can't buy.
Now, one of the things a lot of people miss with China is that they look at the trade between the United States and China in finished goods and finished services. But what they forget is that China does a lot of processing. So a lot of minerals and raw materials that are extracted maybe from Africa or Latin America or elsewhere in the world, even from the United States, there are minerals we extract here that we send to China for processing.
China economic analyst Antonio Graceffo notes the zero COVID-19 lockdowns might just seem like China's problem. But when the world's factory grinds to a halt under lockdown measures, those effects ripple over to the U.S.
So if the zero COVID policies are shutting down those processing plants or the shipping and things like that, it drives up the prices of those things. And it's not just finished products, it's also what we call inputs. So you might have components that are made in China. Even goods that you typically believe are made in America might have components from China. So it winds up driving up the price of everything.
But it goes beyond that. The lockdowns don't just impact China's factories. The Chinese regime just partially shut down the world's largest wholesale hub in East China. That's due to a new outbreak of virus cases. It's also impacted an important port in the South China Sea, known as China's Hawaii. The new lockdowns are triggering renewed worries and global supply chain disruptions. As to why the South China Sea is important, 1/3 of global shipping passes through these waters every year. That includes over $5 trillion in U.S. trade. That's also where Taiwan comes into play. A military blockade around Taiwan would also trigger price increases here at home. That's especially true for semiconductors or microchips. Taiwan produces 90% of the world's high-end chips. The tiny devices go into everything from cell phones to computers, cars, and military equipment. A disruption there caused by a military conflict would drive up prices across the board too. But before going into other areas sparking rising costs, it's important to note what drives inflation. Because it's more than seeing higher prices in stores or at the pump.
People are mistaking higher prices with inflation, and it's not exactly the case. The higher prices because of the supply chain disruption, yes, but the inflation is caused by reckless spending on the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic spending. Inflation comes from the government printing money or the government borrowing money and spending money that it doesn't have.
Part of that goes back to the pandemic back in 2020. The Department of Health and Human Services declared a public health emergency. It was set to expire on July 15th, but the Biden administration extended it for 90 days.
And what a lot of people don't understand, because a lot of people are saying to me, what does it mean they extended the emergency? Nobody's wearing masks. You don't have to have a vaccine to go to the movies. No, but what it means is that all these economic programs remain in place. It means the government continues to spend recklessly because of the continued emergency.
Speaking of emergencies, the pandemic isn't the only one in effect.
And that's why a few weeks ago, when the White House said that they were going to declare an emergency for the climate emergency, I was like, oh my God, no, please no, because it's already so much spending. I mean, we're talking about years of GDP that are just being spent right now. That's your inflation. These other things are price increases. That's not exactly inflation.
And one way Congress is fighting inflation is by spending more. Congress just passed the $430 billion Inflation Reduction Act, which aims to fight climate change and reduce prescription drug prices. But not everyone agrees this is the way to go.
By definition, you cannot spend your way out of inflation. Inflation is caused by government spending. Increasing spending increases the inflation. I don't know where, Janet Yellen and all that, I don't know where they went to school. And they all probably went to much better schools than I did, I grew up in Tennessee. But that's madness. The definition of inflation, like what is the cause of inflation? It's government spending. So how are they planning to get out of the inflation? By spending more money.
So if boosted spending won't fight inflation, what will?
You have to raise interest rates. You have to reduce credit, you have to reduce government spending, you have to reduce social programs, you have to reduce everything that pushes money into the economy because we need to decrease the money supply, and that's how you curb inflation.
But Graceffo adds, instead of doing that, the U.S. is headed towards something called a perfect storm.
And what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for stagflation, which is just the absolute worst. It is the what do they call it, the perfect storm, of economic problems. Because what happens is the Fed raises interest rates, which causes hardship for a lot of people. If you're trying to buy a home right now, mortgage rates are very high. If you want to buy a car, the rates are high. So this is negatively impacting people. Businesses do not expand. When the interest rates go up, businesses don't expand. They don't want to borrow money from the bank to build another factory because now they're borrowing at a higher rate, right? So that's how it impacts the economy.
Looking beyond the U.S., there are two major areas also affecting prices. Pushed to the forefront on both is oil. President Biden has blamed big oil and Russia for the spiking fuel prices. He's also considered slashing tariffs on China, which he argues would lower inflation in the U.S., but make the U.S. appear weak on China. Now, to solve the first one, President Biden recently made a trip to Saudi Arabia, but it didn't go quite as planned.
When our president travels to Saudi and asks them to pump more oil, to produce more energy, they have to be looking at us as though we've got two heads. They know that we can be energy independent at home.
That's Aryeh Lightstone, former special envoy for the Abraham Accords and author of Let My People Know. Right now, the U.S. says we can't be energy independent because of climate change concerns. But Lightstone says
it's not called regional warming, it's called global warming. So therefore, if there's an energy climate issue, then it should affect the United States just as much if it's pumped in Saudi, Iran, Venezuela, other places that we've gone to ask them to produce more energy, as well as it does when it's produced in Texas or in the Dakotas. So when we turn and look at them and say, we need you to produce more energy, they look at us and say, why aren't you producing your own energy? It doesn't make any sense.
But that has impacts beyond just oil. It also affects who countries choose to work with. Lightstone says when it comes to the Middle East,
clarity is the number one name of the game. And to be clear, who are our foes? And that's Iran, and that's China, and that's Russia. And you can stand with them or you can stand with us. Now, who are our allies? That's Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and others. And we'll stand with them.
But if we don't, Lightstone warns.
And when our allies get mixed messages, they have to act in their own best interest. None of these guys, none of these countries want to run to the Chinese. They don't want to run to Russia. They don't want to run to Iran. But if we're not there and we're not dependable, where are they going to go?
He described some examples.
Two very clear examples to that. When Abu Dhabi, the capital of United Arab Emirates, sustained a drone attack from terrorists funded by the Iranians, we, the United States of America, did not rush to condemn the attacks. We didn't rush to provide aid. We didn't rush to provide additional defensive alignments. We waited and we listened. That's not how allies treat each other. When the Saudis receive relentless drone attacks against civilians and against the number one energy producer in the world, Aramco, and we're not doing more in order to prevent that from happening. In fact, we're taking the Houthis, who are in Yemen, who are primarily responsible for those drone attacks, off of the terror watch list or off the terror list. Not only are we not helping our allies, we're actively hurting our allies.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. We hear more from China economic analyst Antonio Graceffo and Aryeh Lightstone, former special envoy for the Abraham Accords and author of Let My People Know. They break down what decisions Americans are facing right now and what shifts we could see on the global stage if those decisions go off track. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
The 2022 NTD 8th International Chinese Vocal Competition will be held from September 29th to October 2nd at the Merkin Hall of Kaufman Music Center in New York City. The competition is honored to have specially invited vocalists with the world-renowned Shen Yun Performing Arts to serve on its panel of judges. The gold award is $10,000. For more information, please visit vocal.ntdtv.com.